Cool, Erin. I just heard before about feeling stressed. Who else is feeling stressed at the moment? Yeah, but overwhelmed? Yeah, okay, good. We're all in the same place. I just apologise, Julie. I was in 3 cities yesterday and got home at 10:15 last night. So apologies, because I'm probably feeling very much the same. So I'm interested in techniques and tools around that. And I think one of the things that we were sort of talking about that apparently has been quite helpful in these sessions is talking about, just things that I've learned on a very weird, mismatched kind of career sort of stage, and some of the kind of the lessons that I've taken from that, and the things that we sort of apply in my daily life at the moment, or try and come back to, particularly when I'm feeling sort of overwhelmed and going, oh my God, why have I said yes to all of these things, or deadlines and commitments and so on. So what I'm going to do today is just talk a little bit about kind of what I didn't know, or what I wish I knew when I was finishing high school, and some of the lessons that I learned along the way, and some of the disasters, both literal and metaphorical, that occurred along the way. So I'm going to do that. Just for kind of context, I've been in Queenstown for 5 years. I live here with my husband. We've got a 6-year-old and an almost 2-year-old. I'm a bit late because I had to get her across the drop off and rush over here, and feel kind of sort of, it's a bit of a juggle. We run 3 businesses between us, and love being here in Southern Lakes. So very exciting to be at school. I've been here a couple of times, but not for a wee while. So starting point, who knows what they want to do when they finish school? Who's shit scared about what they can do when they finish school? Yeah? Who's kind of in between? Yeah? Okay, cool, awesome. It's always good, because sometimes they're like, yeah, I'm absolutely set. And I know that at this point in time, you're going to get heaps of your sort of deadlines, assessments, everything is right up here in front of you, but then it's also all of the questions that start coming as to what are you going to do next year? What are you planning to do? And kind of how that can be a bit overwhelming. So I was in that stage, and I was finishing school and had no idea what I wanted to do. I went to school in Christchurch, and so basically was trying to toss up between fine arts or going to law school. Missed the deadline for fine arts school because my granddad died, and so I went, oh, well, I'll go to law school instead. And ended up going to university and had a huge amount of fun, basically, is the best way that I can put it. 5 years of organising clubs on campus. University of Canterbury, not a sales pitch, this is going to sound like one, has 132 clubs on campus when I was there. So there's basically something for everyone and there's just huge club culture of engagements with the Law Student Society through to, Forestry Society, through to hunting, through to what you name it, there's a club for it on campus. And so it's a really, really fun place to be. And I always use this photo, and that's my best friend on the left. Her name's Nikki. She's a teacher, teaches English. And this is always what I describe as our last photo of normal. This was a photo taken on the 10th of January, which is her birthday. And we're sitting in at the Arts Centre in Christchurch. It was taken in 2011. And so that's kind of our last, my reference point, because of course, thinking about the time 10 years ago, we didn't all have all of the tech that we do now. Was the last photo of normal. And then on the 22nd of February, this earthquake occurred. So Canterbury earthquakes. We had the September one, we'd come through it okay, and sort of felt like, everything was all right. Obviously it happened at 4 in the morning. I was working as a bartender in town and just got home, got woken up. Everyone was like, oh God, okay, that was, that was a lot, but we were all through it. And then this happened on the 22nd of February at 12:51 in the afternoon in the central city. Do you guys remember the earthquakes? Yeah? I've had to start putting pictures in because for a while we'd always turn up and talk about them, and everyone was like, yeah. And then I had my first interaction the other day where I was like, I actually need to bring some pictures in terms of the scale and what it actually was. Because people, yeah, I know it happened, but and so 185 people were killed in predominantly in the central city. We were out, and so the campus at the university is over this side of town, and we're very luckily very unscathed. And so in September, what had happened is that there's this guy here, Sam Johnson. You guys familiar with the Student Volunteer Army? Of course. Yep. So Sammy had set up a Facebook page in September 2010 and said, basically, if I can get 10 mates and they all bring 2 or 3 mates, we can go and do silt. And so silt, and ironically, with all of the weather events that we've had recently, we're talking about silt a lot again. It's like liquefaction that occurs, right? So it's basically sand mixed with a whole lot of other contaminated material. It's heavy, it's quite often dangerous. There's lots of yuck stuff in it as well. And of course, what happens in the earthquakes in this sort of situation is across the city, everyone's houses, all of the silt rises because Christchurch is basically built on a swamp. Not great planning from someone a few years ago, a long time ago. And so people couldn't get in and out of their houses. Their driveways were, the silt came through the house. If you've seen, footage of what's been going on in Napier and Hawke's Bay in terms of the houses sort of flooded by silt, a lot of that was happening in the east of Christchurch. And so Sam was like, well, what if I could get some people to come and just dig this out so that people can get in and out of their house and help the, the elderly lady that lives by herself to, set up a bookshelf and, all of those kind of things to make sure that people are okay. And so we did that a little bit in September when we set up what became the Student Volunteer Army. But what we did then was we moved 40,000 tonnes of silt. And so we were kind of known as, we were out there, and it's a kind of a nightmare, right? Because we were out there with in jandals, with digging silt. We were civil defence's worst nightmare because we just kept turning up to all these volunteers. So we had a couple of thousand people do that in September, and there was kind of a bit of a buzz around it, and people going, oh, that was really cool, good on you. And this is the same time that students also really well known for burning couches. So people were like, wow, students can actually be good people. Yeah, we can be. So there was a little bit of an interesting juxtaposition there. So this is just to give you a sense of, this is the Art Centre in Christchurch in the corner, in the Great Hall. This is the cathedral in the centre of town. And so what we did was basically then in February, mass mobilise. So we had 25,000 people engaged in our student volunteer response, which was in people directly coordinating. We had buses, and so basically what we'd do is we'd bring everyone, we'd bring everyone into the car park on campus. We'd set them up through health and safety. We had a big marquee which was donated to us, and basically we would put them through to have gumboots, sunscreen, hand sanitizer, you name it. We kind of get them kitted up, get them on the buses, and then take them out to the east of Christchurch, and they would dig silt. So I said before we moved 40,000 tonnes of silt in September. In February, we moved 400,000 tonnes of silt, which someone has since calculated is the equivalent of moving the Empire State Building. So I didn't do that calculation. They told us, we were like, that's pretty cool. But it's useful in terms of the scale because it's heavy, it's yuck, and it's pretty. It was pretty complicated. So we got to do some cool things as a result of that, right? We got to, we hosted Prince Harry when he came over. I don't know if we technically call him Prince Harry anymore, but that guy who we all know, we hosted him. We got to Sam met with Hillary Clinton when she came out, and we kind of got a lot of recognition, right? And there was a lot of people saying, "Oh my God, this is amazing! Young people doing this." And the thing that we couldn't quite articulate, and I was with Sammy and a few others in Auckland a couple months ago, we were talking about was the fact that we didn't actually stop to ask for permission. We saw a problem and we thought, okay, what can we do? It was because university was closed. It had been summer, so we all had been working in summer, so we had some money in the bank. So, there was literally nothing to do because the whole city was a red zone. So think COVID lockdown, but you can move around, so there's just nowhere to go or anything to do. And we were like, well, what can we do? And so we turned it into this very, it was very social as well, because of course, what else did you do? You sat at home and you flagged no university, no one had any jobs. Literally COVID lockdown is kind of quite a good sort of reflection of it. And so everyone would come together, go out and dig silt, and then we'd all go back to the big top, which was the marquee, and we'd put on barbecues. We had Tipi Tane come and play for us. We had MGMT come and play for us. When they came and did an acoustic set, it was weirdly awful. But lots of random, because people wanted to come in and contribute, and kind of like what you see within in a COVID lockdown sense as well. Disasters, people want to find a way that they can help. And so we just created a place that people could come to. My favorite one, because we got sent baking from all around the country, because there's a lot of media, right, in terms of what was happening and these young people out there. And so people just sent us baking from all around the country, because much like we see in the Hawke's Bay at the moment, how do we help? We feel really far away when we're down here and we've got beautiful sunshine and they've got cyclones occurring. So what do? We all try and find ways to help, and we were the recipients of that. And a few years before that, we'd been up in Aotearoa for a university debating tournament, and we've been competing in this tournament at a DSL1 primary school. And my biggest fear is how I explain to my son, who goes to Tukura out at Henleys, which is, you know, the most beautiful brand new school. This is an amazing school, and spending time in a DSR1 primary school really puts it in perspective as to how fortunate we are to have the learning opportunities that we do. And we'd spent a week there and we got to know the people, and it was amazing. So that was a couple of years beforehand. And that same school sent us an $82 worth package of $1 lolly mixtures. And all of the kids,
please try again.
Sorry. And so the kids had all got together with their whānau and had drawn on all the lolly packets and had, you know, reached together and sent us this massive packet of $1 mixtures. And we knew exactly what kind of environment these kids were living in and going to school in, and how much that meant. And it was just the most phenomenal kind of connection. So we had a lot of crazy experiences through that. And when Hillary Clinton came out in September and sort of was talking about it, she used this phrase, and always use the tools in your pocket. And I think that's the best description that we've ever got or we've ever had about the Student Volunteer Army. And it's the thing that I'm still involved with the SBA today, and I kind of step in and help them. I was on the board for many years. We set up a foundation to hold all the IP, so hold all the knowledge so that we didn't lose what we did, because we didn't think we'd ever do anything with it. And now we've got, you know, thousands of students across the country involved in the primary schools program, the high school program, and then the clubs at universities as well. But I actually found this because I had to grab it from my office in Christchurch. This was my, and I was like, oh, this is relevant. This is my phone that we had during the earthquakes, right? So iPhone 3, it's pretty cool because it had a colour, which was pretty novel at the time. But like personal hotspots weren't a thing, right? So you couldn't just quickly set it up and work. We couldn't use Google Sheets. We couldn't do, so everything we were doing by hand and by paper, which makes me sound prehistoric. I realise that. But it's interesting because what we did do differently was use Facebook, because Facebook was, at that stage, just literally a page where you were still posting on each other's walls. It was kind of like a MySpace Bebo thing, which is way before your time. But in terms of, it was about just, you know, it was just kind of a party place, and it was still that real student kind of mentality. It wasn't being used for causes and for, you know, for kind of mobilizing people. And so Sam set up an event, which is what we used to use to organize flat parties, and that's how we started the Student Volunteer Army. And so when Hillary used the phrase, you know, use the tools in your pocket, it was, what have you got available? What are the things that we've got that we can access for free immediately, that we can pull together? And that's, I think, the coolest, you know, kind of just going, well, actually, what do we want to achieve, and what have we got access to, and how do we solve those problems? And I think that's one of the things that really, really rings true with what we were able to do, and then go on and create through what now is basically teaching. The entire philosophy of the organisation now is just how do we help other, you know, people trying to solve problems that they've got, whether it might be, you know, silt in houses post-earthquake. We mobilised again into the Hawke's Bay, so we've been working on that for the last few weeks. We set up the grocery delivery service during COVID lockdowns. So every time there's kind of something major happens, we try and look at, like, how can we help and we can support, and what do we know how to do, and what are the tools that we can use on that. Any earthquake SBA related kind of questions, so pause and catch up on my phones up? No? Cool. And so what I was just going to show you as well, in terms of like the scale of where this come from. So that's the Great Hall and the Arts Centre, as I said. So that's kind of where that first photo I showed you with Nikki, that's where that was taken. And we've now worked, so I was on the board for the Arts Centre for 9 years, and 2 weeks ago we just celebrated the completion of restoration. So it's the largest heritage remediation in the Southern Hemisphere, 23 historic buildings. And so that corner that we're standing in there, we got married a couple of years ago, is the corner that is literally there on the ground. So that's pretty cool to see that kind of all redone. This is the cathedral. And then on Tuesday, I was in Christchurch, and we hosted the first official event in the cathedral. We've completed the stabilisation phase of it now, so it's kind of halfway through basically. So we had media and ministers and everyone in there on Tuesday to kind of say, you know, well, this is the most significant milestone for the cathedral since the earthquake. I think I punched this one in there. So anyway, there was kind of basically we set up the SCA, had an interesting and amazing time working with lots of phenomenal people. And then it kind of posed this really big question for me, because I was like, well, hold on, I was going to go to Wellington and be a lawyer, no offense to anyone who wants to do law, it's amazing, it's the most wonderful degree to do. But I was like, I don't really want to be a lawyer. And I've kind of known that since about second year at university. But I had such a great time, I kind of kept going. And so I was coming up to the point of finishing my degree and saying, well, the world has changed, the city's literally fallen down. What do I want to do? Do I still want to go to Wellington? And so instead, I decided that a great thing to do would be to get involved in student politics. Because at that point, the University of Canterbury campus has 246 buildings on it, and every square metre of concrete had to be remediated. So it was the most massive campus restoration project. But at the same time that they were going about that, it was like, well, how do you still make life good for students and look after the 18,000 people that are part of that community? And so the UCSA, the Students Association, is a services and commercial organisation as well as representation. So it's about advocating for students in terms of all of the things that matter and are important. Service delivery, so we set up a dental clinic and we provided about $4 million worth of services to students every year through a range of things that they needed. And then we also ran 2 bars and restaurants, 6 cafes, a forestry block, and a bookshop. So as president of that, you become responsible for this organisation. So that's the job I took on. You get elected to it. So I stood for election. There's 2 of our campaigns, and basically landed myself in my first job as 22, running an $8 million a year organisation, and had no clue what I was doing. And so in that role, we got to do some fun things like hosting the Dalai Lama and trying to get his microphone to work. And we also got to do, work to grow the student volunteer army and kind of figure all of those pieces out. So lots of interesting things along that kind of journey, because at that point it was a case of I arrived as I was the youngest person in the room, because I ended up on all of these, kind of boards with, university people, academics and management team, who were predominantly old white men, and then also ended up in the situation where I had to, try and really quickly grasp that. I was also the first woman to do the role in a really long time, which was another kind of interesting dynamic. And so that was a huge underlining point in actually just trusting your gut on decisions and knowing actually what's right, and asking questions and being willing to learn and saying I don't have the answers to everything, but at the same time also being able to say, well, we're here to be the voice for students on campus. And so that's what's most important. And so being able to say, no, actually, this is a decision. We made some pretty big and some pretty bold decisions while I was there. But it was a cool opportunity to basically say, well, everyone kind of looked at it saying, how do you get out of Christchurch, after university and go on? And it was a case of, well, actually, how often as a young person do you get to be involved in the rebuild of a city? And so that's, what we were able to do, and get pretty involved in that. So then I stood for Christchurch City Council. I just missed out, which I think is the best thing that ever happened to me. So there's always that, there's always the examples that people give of, when I failed at this and it taught me this. This is literally the best example of sometimes actually failing at something teach you lots of things, and you go, oh my God, why did I bother with that? But it actually meant that then I was free to sort of make some other choices about what I wanted to do rather than getting stuck in the local government. And so all of that is kind of about saying, how do you reimagine what do you want to do, what do you want to create, and what are the problems that you want to solve? So fast forward a couple of years, we then, I set up one of my businesses, Narrative, and basically started working with organisations to try and help them get heard out. So we were working across the country, helping them to raise money. So we've raised about $5 million for different organisations, crowdfunding predominantly, working with startups, social enterprises, not-for-profits, and basically helping them amplify what they're trying to do. It's really hard, obviously, to raise money or to get media, to do all of those various pieces. And so we now work helping them, to kind of lift their voices up. So that was kind of my day job from about 2015 to 2020. Well, so it was partly my day job. And so we set that organisation up. And then this is basically coming into the 2020 election, we had the opportunity to say, well, what would it look like if we asked around the policies coming into the election and put a feminist lens across the policies and said, what does this mean for women, wahine, trans, non-binary, and intersex people coming into the election? And so we ended up setting up what is called the Gender Justice Collective, and it's led to the establishment of of my second business, which is called Project Gender. And so basically, long story short, because we don't have much time for that, one of the areas that we went out and surveyed 3,500 people. So again, saying what's the problem, where can we help, and where can we add the most value? One of the things that came out in our survey of 3,500 people was healthcare. It's of no surprise to everyone in the media around healthcare at the moment, and also we know it living here in a smaller town. This is an example just on how difficult it is to get a LARC, which is a long-acting reversible contraceptive, like an IUD, funded if you live in Auckland. Okay, so that's the complexity that you face and that they expect people to navigate. That's just one very small example when it comes to reproductive health in terms of the challenges that are being faced. And so we set out on what became a 2-year project, basically to work with ministers, work with policymakers, work with the community, and work with healthcare providers to figure out how to change the law to actually do something about this, to enact change from the top. Because at the same time, they were going through the Pay Order Health and Futures reform as well. And so we were successful in being able to introduce a women's health strategy into law last year. And we're now working with the Ministry for Health to figure out what that actually looks like. So in terms of talking about how to reframe healthcare and saying how do we do this better, especially as we go through the DHB amalgamation, what are the things that we could do? How do we get community voices listened to both by healthcare professionals who are desperately trying to get government to listen and to draw those dots together? And so that's been a piece of work that we've been working on for 2 years, and to be honest, it will continue. And so all of those kind of pieces coalesce into 3 questions that we use when we take on projects, or when we say, well, actually, what do we want to be doing? And so that's both for me personally, for both businesses, and to say, what can we do? So can I add value in terms of am I the right person? Okay, and that's always the first starting point, is like, am I the right person? Is there someone that's a better fit than this? And so that's always the first question, because it's not about ego, it's about saying how do we make sure that there's good diversity, there's good representation, there's good, everyone's kind of contributing. Am I the right person? Does the purpose align? So is the kaupapa, does it match what we're about? Does it fit with what we're trying to do and some of the issues that we're trying to solve? And third, and this is probably not the most important, but it is a really telling one in terms of, do I want to work with the people? And the people that you surround yourself with, and the people that you say, it's that old, you are the sum of the people you spend, 5 people you spend most time with, but actually thinking about the people, is this a collaborative, open, trusting, positive environment that we're going to go through this, this hard stuff with? Absolutely. And when I look at kind of the common things of the projects that we've picked up, or the stuff we've started, or the people we've worked with, it always comes back to having a great team of people around and saying, and if you get to this point and go, oh, maybe I do, but actually I feel like there's other people that we bring in there. How do you then bring in other people and be the kind of the collaborative team builder to then bring other people into that? And those are kind of the 3 questions. And I've tested this. I was talking to Sammy, who's the illustrious founder, as we like to wind him up and call him, but who's founded the SVA. And we were talking about that, and actually those 3 questions still stand true to all of the work that we've done over the last 12 years. Since that that very first day, we were like, maybe we should go out and dig some silt. And those questions still actually sort of follow through to all of the work that we do at the moment. And it's been a very whirlwind trip through all of that, but interested to throw it open and say questions, comments, thoughts.
Erin, can I ask, yeah, what do you wish someone had told you when you were these here at the Christchurch?
Yeah. I wish probably that it had been, someone had more clearly said to me that it doesn't need to be a straight career line, and that's that whole, I think we learned that, and I was listening to a podcast, I was Joe B. say about, guys saying that he's been CEO of all these amazing organizations, but he started out as a comedian, and he was working as a stand-up comedian, and then he bought, the bar that they were performing in, and then, and then he was talking about how he's basically now, still uses the skills from being a stand-up comic in his day job today, and his storytelling, and he's sort of talking about how we do patch it together. And I think that's the thing, is that actually saying yes to stuff that like lights you up, that sparks you, you're like, yeah, I'm passionate about this, I care about this, that will all kind of match together in different ways, even though it doesn't necessarily always feel like, it isn't. I've seen, having gone to law school, I have been friends with a lot of people who, when I finished at 22 and said, I'm not going to become a lawyer, I'm going to go out and do this. And I did 2 years at UCSA, and then I was like, I'm going to go out on my own, just figure it out and try and earn a living in some way. And kind of, it was a real hodgepodge, like kind of situation. And I had a lot of friends who really, really battled with that. And they're like, Erin, when are you going to get a real job? And I was like, well, I'm not sure, like, we'll figure it out. And they all got to about 30, when I'm 33, they got to about 30, and they went, oh, I hate my job. You know, how do I escape my job? And I'm not sure. And so then they kind of feel like they've sort of started from the same point. And that's, you know, everyone's journey is very, very different. But at the same time, I've been really, really fortunate to say yes to stuff that I'm passionate about, that I'm excited by, and that's kind of, you know, stacked together. But I think sometimes we prioritise the straight career path. Don't give up the stuff that you love. It's basically the, yeah. Questions? Comments? Everyone's thinking through their to-do lists, like, you know.
Do you have any advice for getting young people especially involved in voluntary initiatives?
Yeah, make it fun. Is actually, you know, is the kind of the first rule that we always run by, right? Like it's got to be, you know, I talk about the team environment and getting people in. Volunteering is such an amazing way to meet and make friends, and to make friends with people that you didn't know, you know. And like we still have connections with, you know, some of the gorgeous old ladies. This group is, you know, that we first met when we were digging stuff, right? We're still in touch with some of these people, which is, you know, is phenomenal. But I think that making it fun is a core rule. Provide food is another good rule. Yeah, kai, water, and kind of make sure that everyone's sort of looked after and they have the best possible experience. Because it is, I think, one of the things that we find, particularly, in trouble here, particularly with kind of some of the traditional older school volunteering organisations, it's about like, we'll just get the volunteers to turn up and that, you know, they kind of labour on tap kind of thing. But when we've prioritised that team environment, making people feel really welcome, every engagement, every experience being really rewarding, they always come back. And that's the key bit, right? Getting them there the first time and then making sure that they actually want to come back and do it again, and that they feel empowered to bring friends along with them. So I think that highly personal, highly, you know, that interrelationship stuff is really important.
Did you do quite a lot of volunteer work in high school, or do you have like any leadership roles?
Yeah, I did a lot of volunteering at high school. I did kind of everything from, you know, the, you know, arts and cultural kind of, you know, arts culture, whatever the committee was called. I really should remember that. I was a prefect in my last year of school as a head of house, which was again all around getting people involved, bringing people together and saying, you know, what do we want to do? And I also did a lot. I used to did a lot of like sport volunteering and coaching as well, and then also ended up coaching like debating and kind of, you know, supporting, you know, kind of bringing younger debaters, a lot of like theatre and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, basically was really busy and kind of did school with on the side, which is not probably what I should advocate, but it was really cool. And I think that actually it was funny, we were just at a wedding the other day with some school friends, and we were talking about, and all the stuff we remember is all of the fun stuff we did, you know, like around, you know, getting people involved, you know, really with us. It's not the story that you remember, right? So that's, yeah.
And how do you balance things when it does get really busy and you do have stuff that has to be done? Like, would you have any tips for that front?
Yeah, I don't feel like my husband was I'm not a good person to give that advice this morning. Yeah, no, I'm about to get on a plane at 4 o'clock today as well. So he was I'm not, no, it is always, I run a top, what I call a hot list, basically. So I run what are the 3 things I have to do right now, which is always the like top of mind, because I heard the word procrastinate, you know, before. There's always so much to do, and I always just run you know, okay, in the next, you know, whether it's the next hour, the next day, what are the things that are top of mind that I'm going to lose sleep over? So I sort of always start from that point, and our team call that, you know, the eating the frog. So, you know, what are the frogs that you've got to eat, which is in the Mark Twain quote, and it's actually to the point that our team just use it as, you know, like this is on my desk, this is the frog, like, I just don't know how. And the other bit about that I think is really important is that because we've created a culture in our team where we say, you know, this is a frog, it also means that we identify when we need to ask for help with it as well. Because that's the other piece, is that sometimes it's like, it just takes actually talking it through with somebody else, or saying, I can't figure out how to solve this problem, but now I've put it all on my desk, and I'm really bad at doing this, right? I sort of tend to go, oh, I need to solve this problem, and kind of sit and think on it, and then I get stressed and worried that I, you know, haven't come up with a solution. Whereas actually sometimes it's picking up the phone to someone and say, you know, hey, can I talk this through? So using that language and just kind of thinking about what are those roadblocks, and then actually what do I need to do about, you know, about how can I do? Is it another person? Is it another brain? Is it a, you know, kind of going for a walk and kind of thinking it through, or is it just sitting down and getting it done sometimes as well?
So the frog, though, can you say it's a mark time?
Yeah, it's the quote is something like always, if you eat a frog in the morning, it's the worst part of your day done, or it's I'll find it for you and send it too. But it's basically that, you know, if you eat the frog first thing, nothing else will be that bad in the rest of the day. And so that's kind of where it's come from, which I quite like.
Oh, that's awesome. Does anyone else have any more
Yeah, good, awesome.
Erin, I just wanted to say, like, thank you for finding a moment in what was like incredibly busy schedule and travel and kids and thank you very much for coming in. And I think you possibly, if it's okay, if we can contact some of the student leaders to look at email to us.
Absolutely, and I probably should have said that as well. The other thing is that our entire kind of ethos behind when we set up narrative was to find ways that we can come support, you know, young people coming through, because we will benefited from support from, you know, other people. So please feel free to share my email address, always click an email through, send us to say, you know, very, very happy.
Yeah, and their advice about making volunteering fun, food, and looking after the team environment and making friends like that really resonated. It's kind of obvious, but you don't name it to think about it to make it a priority. So.
Yeah, I think that applies to some of you guys too, with not just volunteering, but things that you run, like different events and things like that. It's very transferable to meetings and house comp and everything you do. So, yeah.
And testing it as well, right? It's like, okay, cool, we did that this time, did that work, you know, and just kind of comparing it. I think that's, yeah, just real magic in there, but food is definitely a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.